better than that. Good morning.
Good morning.
There we go. Thank you. It's a habit of mine. I always say good morning. I used to confuse my students terribly with that. My name is Shauna Marie O'Toole. That is my legal name. A few things about me. I'm a parent. I have two great kids. One's 16, one's 22. I'm a scientist, product engineer. I'm an author, teacher, and I also happen to be transgender, specifically transsexual. What I'd like to do today is to talk to you a little bit about our issues and hopefully find a way for the needs of the trans community to mesh here with the Libertarian Party. And after hearing Drew talk, I think there's actually a lot we can agree upon. I just want to hit a couple definitions here before I start telling you my story. The term transgender is a very big umbrella term. It covers everything from cross-dressers, people who need to wear or have some item of clothing from the opposite sex. May not be all the time, but at least some of the time. And this is more than just dress up on Halloween. To transsexual, where our sense of self is opposite that of our body sex. Gender is here between the ears, sense of self-perception. Sex is the role in reproduction. I would venture here that most people here are cisgendered. CIS, it's a chemical term. By that, your perception of self, between the ears, your gender, matches your body's sex. For a small percentage here of Americans, of people in general, it's opposite. Okay. Gender variant, people whose sense of gender is different than either this perfect male or perfect female. I am leaving out the term drag queen, because drag queens really, in general, do not fall under the transgender umbrella. These are people who are performers. And their shtick, their gig, is to be either hyper-masculine or hyper-feminine and do a show. Their sense of self, their gender, and their sex, in general, are in harmony. That's their gig. Something else I want to talk to you about before I start telling you a little of my story is that being lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender is not a choice. Medical science is showing that this is psychophysical. By that, our brains really are wired this way. When I talk at various colleges and when I write about this, speak about this, people ask me, where's the evidence? I would start off with the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, volume 85, number 5. Researchers were looking for some sort of proof. Is being trans a psychological thing or physiological? What better place to start than with the brain? Researchers in Europe started doing dissections. And they found that the male brain is structurally different than the female brain. It's simply wired different. I know, who's going to argue with this one? Now, in this initial study, which admittedly was small, they had some male to female transsexuals. Their brains were female. 100% of the time. Small sample. Now, I don't know if any one of you remember the story of cold fusion. Researchers said, we found a way how to do fusion at room temperature as a chemical reaction, not a nuclear one. Two scientists now, I think, are teaching it, instead of being prominent physicists, are now teaching at a community college. It cost them everything. So researchers, whenever you find anything that's 100%, you say, eureka, or where did I screw up? Good researchers will say, where did I screw up? So they gave their research to another hospital. Take a look at it. Where did we screw up? They agreed with the results. They weren't happy with it. They went and took their research and gave it to a research hospital here in the United States and said, this is what we've done, continue the research, expand the data set. 100% of the time, male to female transsexuals have a female brain. Female to male transsexuals have a male brain. 100% of the time. Research continued on. Journal of Psychoneuroendocrinology. I'm a science geek. I read medical journal articles. I used to be able to read them for free before the economy crapped out. They found a genetic link. They were looking at male to female transsexuals because we're a larger population. They found a genetic link. They found that it's a combination of genetics and hormone wash in the uterus. And depending when that hormone washes, you're either straight, you're trans, or you're gay. They were able to induce this in a series of different research animals. Rats, dogs, sheep, pigs, I believe. So one took this, they found a genetic link. They did a survey. 127 trans women volunteered for genetic analysis. All 127 had the same genetic blip. So when anyone says that we choose this lifestyle, believe me, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. But I also wouldn't trade it for the world. So let me tell you a little bit about my story. And my story is not that different from a lot of people in the trans community who are my age. If I could, I might say I'm maybe a bit of a better storyteller. My journey began when I was about 5 years old. Maybe hearing the news, these 5, 6, and 7-year-olds who were coming out saying, Mom, Dad, I'm a girl. Mom, Dad, I'm a boy. This is when it actually does begin. This is when your sense of gender happens. Now, my dad was doing his residency at Utica State Hospital as a psychiatrist. He used to joke I was his first and only failure as a shrink. And being the only kid my age on hospital grounds, didn't have anyone to play with. Now, this was also the time, we're talking early 60s, of going out for the Sunday afternoon drive. Dad would drive, Mom would be in the passenger seat, I'd be bouncing around in the back seat. No seat belts, no car seat, and somehow I still lived. Who would have thunk? And so I would continue this on with my teddy bear. To help facilitate this, I liberated one of my mom's dresses, not knowing that this was a silvery chiffon dress she had saved up for, and was rather upset to find it crumpled up on the floor of my bedroom closet. So she came out and said, it's wrong, it's bad, it's evil. And by doing that, threw me in the closet for the next 4 decades. Now keep in mind, at the time, talking early 60s, coming out as gay or lesbian or, God forbid, trans, was considered a serious psychological issue. Treated with aversion therapy, forced indoctrination, or electroshock. The media continued this. If you look at the TV movies, made-for-TV movies, the cop shows or whatever, who were the homewreckers? It's the lesbian woman there taking the wife away from some successful man. Who are the villains? It's the gay couple, or the gay guy down the street. Cop shows used to actually put in segments to say that, how they busted some gay guy doing whatever. Who is a psychopathic murderer? The transsexual. Look at movies like Dressed to Kill, Silence of the Lambs. This continues on today. So anyhow, my journey began then, about age 5, and I love my mom, so I went deep into the closet, so to speak. Went deep stealth. I love my mom. She said I was wrong and didn't want to do it. In the process of doing this, it created this dichotomy inside of me. Part of me reaching out for some sort of lifeline, part of me trying to be what society said I had to be. This continued, so I always had some bit of a wardrobe. I may have made it myself. And I ended up being a rather terrible seamstress, I'll have you realize. This went through married life, where I always had something. Part of me had to have it. Couldn't explain why. And it was not a sexual release, but part of me needed to have it. And part of me was fighting this. People often ask me, why did I get married if I had this problem? One reason and one reason only, and it's not because I was trying to prove myself a guy. It obviously didn't work. Rather, I fell in love with this beautiful woman. I wanted to have kids with her. Unfortunately, when things reached a breaking point, she just couldn't deal with the change. May hear she can get away with anything in Halloween. It's not true. Halloween 2003. It's 45 years old. Went to a Halloween party as a woman. There's two ways how to do it, either parody or passable. I went passable. Go big or go home. Explains the size of my body. Go big or go home. From that day, she has not looked my direction since. She put the pieces together long before I did. 2006, I was kicked out of the house. 2008, I transitioned and started living as myself full-time. At this time, I was teaching, high school science teacher, and everything, the district was positive, accepting, the kids were great. It was no big deal. You would think everything would be all hunky-dory after that. Not even close. Now, it's amazing how I had the highest pass rate ever in that school for earth science. Then I started messing around with the meeting pattern, and my pass rate went from 92% to 67. And to be quite honest, I'm surprised it was that high with what they were doing with the schedule and the lack of science education in the lower grades. But it was my fault. So they put me on a teacher improvement plan. Could never meet it, so I was given a choice, resign or be fired. I couldn't file for divorce. Couldn't file for divorce because the state views me as wronging her. I went to 4 law firms. The best one gave me a 15% chance of success, and they wanted $10,000 up front with the anticipation of another $10,000 to $15,000 as a retainer. Yeah. So, having dug holes in cemeteries, had a lab 1,000 feet underground, helped with the project, I flew on board shuttle during STS-34. The best job I can get right now is making subs at Wegmans. So my undergrad and my master's degree are worthless. Why? Because I'm trans. I have had interviews, some they disappear, when they realize that Shauna has a male-sounding voice, and I am not going to hide it. Be surprised how fast an interview can end. Now, I knew this was bad. But some of the stats, let me give this to you. National survey. Americans who make less than $10,000 a year, and this is before the economic crash. This is from the National Transgender Discrimination Survey. The title is Injustice at Every Turn. 4% of all Americans make less than $10,000 a year. For the trans community, 15%. How many of us have been harassed at work? 90%. Simply for expressing who we are. We're not hurting anyone else. All we're doing is expressing how we perceive ourselves. And doing so in an appropriate way. 90% of us have been harassed. Anywhere from being told which bathrooms you can or cannot use. Because heaven forbid that a straight woman should go into the bathroom and find me there. This really harks back to, what if you had a woman of color into a white bathroom? Same sense. Down to 26% of us being outright fired. It's perfectly legal. We have twice the homelessness rate because of that. Twice the HIV rate because of that. Because if you can't make ends meet, where are you going to go? The sex and drug trade. 16% of us survive using that. 15% make less than 10 grand, 16% work the sex and drug trade. Do you think there's a relationship? And that's twice the national average. Twice the unemployment rate. 4 times the unemployment rate if you're a person of color who happens to be trans. 28% of us have been denied a home or apartment. A fifth of us have been denied services when we go for help. Our kids, all you have to do is not look like a straight guy or straight gal. 78% of our K through 12 kids are harassed at school. And that's not just by their peers. We're talking about administrators, teachers, faculty members, other parents harassed. 35% physically assaulted. 12% sexually assaulted, and 6% just expelled. Say, there's the door, don't let it hit you, and we're on the way out. Teens have roughly about a 12% suicide attempt rate. Gay and lesbian teens, about 20%. Transgender teens, 41% suicide attempt rate. And this continues on into adulthood. I'm a suicide survivor. Nevertheless, nonetheless, going through all this hell, the vast majority of us are happier in the workplace. We just want a job. We're more productive, we're happier, we just want a chance. Now we understand trying to keep government out of the lives of people. There is a bill in the State Assembly and the State Senate called GENDA, Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act. All that it does is simply mean that I have the same civil rights as you have. Okay? Protection of the minority against the tyranny of the majority. Basic unity with the Libertarian Party. All it does is protect me and those like me from being thrown out on the street for no reason at all. Now, let's say you work in a bank. You're the bank president, you have someone who comes and transitions at your bank and comes in dressed like RuPaul. You have every right to fire them. If you come in an appropriate attire, like any other businesswoman. Why? If performance doesn't match up, absolutely fire them. But if they simply are better workers now, this is what it protects. This is something we need your help to get passed. It's passed the Assembly. And if the Libertarian Party were to take a positive stand on gender, this is something where the trans community would take a very serious look at the Libertarian Party and say, these people understand us. We want civil rights. This is the party of civil rights. Maybe we should vote Libertarian. We need your help, because all we want to do is be like you. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes. You shared a statistic with me earlier about the chances of death by assault or something. Could you share that one with everyone? Because I want to remember too.
Certainly. Typical American male, this is according to the FBI, may have about a 1 in 30,000 chance, lifetime probability of being murdered in the United States. American female, or correction, a female living in the United States, murdered about 1 in 50,000. 1 in 12.
1 in 12,000?
12.
12. Oh.
1 in 12. Gender will help. Thank you for bringing that one back up. Other questions, please ask. And don't worry about stepping on my toes or saying you're going to embarrass me, because you're not going to. I've been asked everything.
Do you have copies of that bill?
The gender bill?
I don't have it on me. I can send Drew the link and he can pass it around here to the party. It is out. Basically what it does is that it prevents anyone who's transgender from being discriminated against. It's that simple. I will send Drew the link and he will share it here with the party. And thank you for asking for it and for considering it. Just by asking for it shows that you're considering it, and that's appreciated. Yes, ma'am.
I hate to sound naive, because I probably am, but when you go to apply for a job, how does anybody even know you're transgender?
In the application, that's a great question. In the application, they don't. But let me ask this. How many people here read me as trans when I got up to speak? And be honest.
Well, I mean,
The vast majority. Okay, most people recognize me and read me as being trans right away. If not by the body, by the voice. And so in the interview, I may get past the application point, but in the interview is where things shut down. So it's a great question there. So the applications will go out. I may get a phone interview. Phone interview will shut down very quickly. Other questions, please. Yes?
I'm trying to get my head around the words are escaping me.
Transgender.
Do most or all head toward surgery?
That is an excellent question. No. But what may happen is that their presentation may be more androgynous. Me, I would love to go for surgery, except it's $30,000 out of pocket. It's a little expensive.
Is that because most insurance doesn't cover it?
Most insurance does not cover it. Most companies do not cover it in their health plans. Even though in the long run, it'd actually be less expensive because we're going to be happier once our bodies match our brains. But that's an argument that's still going on. Cross-dressers, they may, for example, simply need to have some element of opposite-sex attire either with them or on occasion. Transsexuals like me, who live 24/7 as themselves, whose perception of gender and sex are opposite, we're a smaller portion of it, and we're oftentimes the ones that are the most brutally attacked. At least here in the United States, when it happens, it's usually a gun to the back of the head, as opposed to being dragged miles down behind a moving vehicle, which happens. Multiple stab wounds. I think, let's see what, most grotesque when I apologize for this. 27 stab wounds, 12 high caliber weapon shots, and then dismembered. Same person. And that was after being dragged behind the car for several miles. Trust me, no one chooses this, but at the same time, having seen now both sides of the gender line, I think we're very good in terms of, I have guys ask, why do women do this? I have women ask, why do guys do that? We're almost like a translator between the sexes, which is kind of fun.
You can make a living.
You can make a living as a translator. One more thing here for the United Nations, another translator, gender translator. So most of us may not be looking for surgery. Some of us may have a more androgynous, more middle-of-the-road appearance, where they don't look male or female. In a number of companies, a number of places there, that is not acceptable either. A friend of mine is genderqueer. Genderqueer, this person doesn't perceive himself as male or as female, but somewhere in between, elements of both. This presentation is more gender neutral, more middle of the road. He prefers male pronouns, but he winces every time he hears the phrase "ladies and gentlemen." I know it gets a little strange. Gender is a continuum. It's not either or. Even sex is not an either or. but that's for another time. Other questions, please? Yes,
I mean, we have laws against discrimination.
and we're excluded.
Well, no, but it has to be proven in a court. It's always something that's probably difficult to prove. I'm just curious, I mean, not that I'm not for any kind of discrimination at all.
Sure.
But I mean, how is it, I don't understand the need for another law when we already have laws that cover discrimination.
Good question. What happens is that the court has taken a very narrow, courts, plural, have taken a very narrow ruling. Like, for example, SONDA, the Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act, only applies if you're gay, lesbian, or bisexual. The courts have ruled that I am excluded because I'm transsexual.
By courts, you mean the state here in New York?
State courts and federal courts. I'm excluded from that because they're tight.
Yeah, so you would be actually being included, trying to include transgender people into that.
I believe the gender law, the way I've seen it, mostly it's written, it just adds transgender and maybe other forms of trans or gender identity. It kind of just adds that to those laws.
Okay.
Because those non-discrimination laws didn't already include that. It was just, but there's probably more to it than that, but that's a general idea as far as I understand it.
Trying too hard to define everything.
Yeah, that's
where the problem the problem always is.
You know, if we were simply to say everyone needs to be protected under the law regardless, everyone would be happy campers. And that's all we're trying to do, simply trying to get the same rights and privileges that everyone else here has.
Seeing everybody just as an individual first.
Exactly.
Absolutely. A member of a certain group or something.
Yeah.
They would have a lot of problems in that.
You know, I could come on out and say I am a lesbian preoperative trans woman, but I prefer the term human.
Yeah.
And if we look at each other as human and trying to give each other the same courtesies that we would give any other human, we'd be a lot further along. And listening to what Drew said, that's basically the basic tenet here of the Libertarian Party, is it not?
Yes.
And treat everyone as human. And that's what gender will do. It'll help us to be accepted and treated as human.
Well, thank you, Shauna.
Thank you very much.
Interesting.